She heard him before she saw him. The doors at the end of the corridor burst open, and a sound came through that was not quite screaming. It was lower than that, more controlled. The sound of men who had been trained not to show panic, but were failing. Amara was already moving. She had been moving for 11 hours straight, and her body had stopped registering movement as a choice. It simply happened. Her feet found the floor. Her hands found the supply cart. Her eyes found the source. 3 men in suits. 1 man between them, barely upright. The suits were the kind that cost more than her monthly rent, and they were ruined. Collar dark with blood, jacket cut open at the side. The men holding him moved like they owned the space they walked into. Most people who entered this hospital moved differently. Smaller, like they understood they had come to a place where the hierarchy of the outside world did not apply. These men did not understand that. Or they understood it and did not care. Amara cared about exactly one thing. The man in the center was losing blood from somewhere below his left ribs, and he was doing it with a quietness that worried her more than noise would have. She reached them first. The attending on duty, Dr. Nishimoto, had discovered a critical need to review lab results on the 4th floor approximately 3 minutes ago, which was a coincidence of timing so precise it might have impressed her if she had time to think about it. She did not. She took the man's pulse at the wrist, then the throat, then made 4 decisions in roughly the same second. "Room 6, she said. Now the largest of the 3 suits looked at her for a moment that lasted too long. He was deciding something. She watched him decide it and did not blink. "Now," she said again. Quieter that time. They moved. If you want to know what happened next, why this night would become the thing Amara Osei measured the rest of her life against, stay with it. Subscribe while you're here, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This one travels. I want to see how far. The man on the table was called Takeda. She did not learn that immediately. She learned it the way she learned most things that night, late, after the fact, piecing it together from the silence of the men around her. They said his name the way people say the name of something they cannot afford to say wrong. Carefully, with both hands. She got the bleeding stopped. It took 22 minutes and 2 units of O negative and the steady, particular attention that had made her good at this job despite every obstacle the job had arranged in front of her. A resident appeared in the doorway at some point and told her she probably shouldn't be doing this without authorization. She told him to get out. He got out. She did not think about that again until much later. Either Takeda was unconscious for most of it. When he came back, it was not slowly. He was gone, and then he was present, his eyes open and fixed on the ceiling, and she noticed before he noticed that he was looking at the lights the way someone looks at a thing they had not expected to see again. She was charting at the counter when he spoke. She had her back to him, and she did not turn right away. In her experience, men in this condition said things in the first few minutes of consciousness that they regretted, and she had learned that giving them a moment cost nothing. "You're still here," he said. "Yes, why?" She turned around then. He was watching her. His face was the kind of face that had been handsome before it became experienced, and there was something in his eyes that she could not name and did not try to. Attention, maybe, or the kind of recognition you get from someone who has learned to identify competence by its shape. "Because you still needed someone here," she said. He looked at her for another moment. Then he closed his eyes. That night, before she left, one of the suits, the one who had looked at her in the corridor, the one who had needed a full second to decide to move, stopped her at the nurse's station. He had taken off his jacket. She noticed his shoes were off too, set neatly by the wall. Old habit, she thought. Something from somewhere else. "Oyabun says thank you," the man said. She did not know what the word meant. She did not ask. She picked up her bag and went home and stood in her kitchen for a while without turning on the lights, and she thought about the look on the man's face when he had opened his eyes and found her still in the room. She thought about how surprised he had looked. That was the thing that stayed with her, not the blood, not the suits, not the ride home at 2 a.m. on a train that smelled like rain and exhaustion. Just the surprise. Like he had expected to be abandoned and had prepared for it so thoroughly that her presence had broken some calculation he was running. She had seen that look before. She knew it from the inside. That night, the men in the suits sat in 3 cars outside a private building in an older part of the city, and the youngest of them asked the one who had spoken to the nurse what she had said when he thanked her. The older man thought about it. "Nothing," he said. "He said it the way you say something, when what you mean is." That was the answer. 3 days later, a car arrived outside the hospital. Black, quiet, the kind of clean that takes effort to maintain. The driver handed an envelope to the front desk and said it was for a nurse named Amara, and left before anyone could ask questions. Inside was a card with a number on it. No name, no explanation. On the back, in small and precise handwriting, in case the hospital causes you any difficulty because of last Tuesday. She held the card for a while. Then she put it in her pocket. The hospital did cause her difficulty. It started small, a scheduling change, a case removed from her rotation, a note in her file that had not been there before and that no one could clearly explain. Dr. Nishimoto, who had been on the 4th floor reviewing lab results, suddenly had a great deal of interest in the treatment decisions made in room 6. He did not have this conversation with Amara directly. He had it with her supervisor, who had it with the department head, who sent an email asking Amara to come in for a meeting. She went. The meeting was the kind that has a conclusion already written before anyone sits down. She had been in rooms like this before. Different rooms, different cities, different reasons, always the same architecture. She sat with her hands in her lap, and she listened, and she let them say the things they needed to say, and when they finished, she said she understood, and she stood up and she walked out. In the stairwell she stopped and breathed for 1 minute. Then she took out the card. She had not planned to use it. She dialed the number, and she was not sure, while it rang, what she would say. Takeda answered himself. She had expected a buffer, one of the suits, a secretary, someone whose job was to decide whether she was worth connecting. Instead, it was him. Direct, like he had been waiting for a specific call and had arranged to receive it himself. "They're retaliating," she said. "I'm not asking you to do anything. I just thought you should know." A silence. The kind that is not empty. "Where are you?" he said. "Hospital stairwell. Stay there." She did not stay there. She walked back to her ward and she went back to work, because there were patients, and they needed someone, and she was the someone available, and that had always been the simplest mathematics she knew. But 2 hours later, her supervisor appeared at her elbow, with an expression she had never worn before. Something between discomfort and surprise, and a quality Amara could only describe as rearrangement. "The meeting this morning," her supervisor said. "I've been told to inform you it's been canceled and that your case assignment has been restored." "Thank you," Amara said. She went back to her patient, and she thought about the 1-minute phone call and the 2 hours and what had happened in between. She thought about the kind of man who could make a hospital rearrange itself in the time it took her to finish a shift. She thought she should be frightened. She checked and found she wasn't. Funny how that works. What frightens us and what should are not always the same country. The next time she saw him, he came to the hospital himself. He had an appointment under a name she did not recognize, and she was not his assigned nurse, and he should not have been anywhere near her ward. He was there anyway. Sitting in a chair near the window of a consultation room that happened to be visible from the corridor she happened to walk down at the end of her shift. She slowed. He saw her slow. He did not wave. He did not smile. He made a small movement with his head that she interpreted, somehow, as an invitation. She went in. The room was cold in the way hospital rooms are cold, managed, institutional, the temperature of somewhere designed for procedure. He sat in the chair with his jacket on and his hands on his knees, and he looked, she thought, like a man in a room he had taught himself to tolerate. "How is it?" she said. "The stitches held," he said. "I know. I checked the notes." He looked at her then. Just looked. She noticed he did that, deployed silence the way other men deployed words, as a thing with weight, as something you were meant to feel. "You checked," he said. "Yes, a pause." "Why?" he said. She sat down across from him. She thought about the question, and she gave it the serious consideration it deserved, because she had the sense that he asked questions he actually wanted answered. "Same reason as before," she said. Someone needed to. He was quiet for a long time. Outside the window the light was going, and Tokyo was doing what Tokyo does in the hour before dark, collecting itself, drawing in. The city breathing differently. "Takeda Hiroshi," he said. He said it like a thing being placed on a table. "Amara Osei," she said. He nodded once. It was the kind of nod that meant something, though she could not yet decode what. She learned him slowly, across visits that nobody scheduled and nobody could quite explain. He was not what she had expected, which was a lesson she kept having to relearn, that she should stop expecting, because her expectations were based on what she had been shown, and what she had been shown was rarely the whole picture. He read. He had opinions about tea that he expressed with the same seriousness some men reserved for territory or money. He asked her questions and listened to the answers with complete attention, which was rarer than it should have been, and which she noticed every time. He told her, once, that his organization had not wanted to take him to her hospital, that they had argued for somewhere private, somewhere quiet, somewhere that didn't put him in a position of needing to trust a stranger. He told her he had not been able to explain why he overruled them. He told her this without looking at her, his eyes on the garden visible through the window of the room they were sitting in, the small formal garden that someone tended with great patience. She understood what he was saying. She did not make him say more of it. What she did not know, what she could not have known, was that in the weeks after that first night, 3 separate people had made inquiries about her, asked questions about her record, her background, her history at this hospital, and the one before it, and the one before that. They had found what she already knew, that she was excellent at her job, that she had been made to feel otherwise on several specific occasions by several specific people, and that she had kept coming to work regardless. Takeda had read these reports himself. He had sat with them for a long time. He knew her name before she told him. He had known it since the 2nd week. The look on his face the night she told him was not surprise. It was something more careful than that, a man confirming that what he had decided about someone was correct. The thing about being seen, really seen, is that it doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, like a key turning in a lock you had stopped expecting to be opened. You don't always recognize it in the moment. You recognize it later, when you reach for the lock and find it already open, and you understand that someone was paying attention while you were looking the other way. The crisis, when it came from the direction she had not been watching. A member of the hospital board, a woman named Sasaki, whose name Amara had heard before in specific contexts, delivered in specific tones, decided that the situation needed to be addressed formally. She used that word, formally. The board convened a review. They invited Amara to attend and explain her conduct in treating an affiliated patient without proper authorization, and the implied invitation in the language of the letter was to understand that the outcome had already been decided. She went. She brought nothing with her. No documentation, no character references, no prepared statement. Takeda was already there. Not as a defendant, not as a witness. He sat on the far side of the room in the chair that the room's architecture assigned to people the board was required to take seriously, and he was flanked by two men she recognized, and he was watching the door when she walked through it. He nodded at her the same way he had nodded in that first consultation room. One clean motion, meaning clear. She sat down. The board chair, a man named Ino, opened his mouth to speak. Takeda spoke first. He did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice, she had learned. He said one word, and the word was her name, her full name, first and last, with a precision and a weight that made every other person in the room go still. Not her first name, the way the residents said it, not her last name, the way the administration said it. Both, together, in a voice that made it a declaration. The room froze. Dr. Nishimoto, who was seated 2 chairs from the board chair, went a particular color. Sasaki-san's expression did something complicated and did not recover. Inuo looked between Takeda and Amara, and then at his notes, and then at his notes again, as if the notes might resolve the situation. Then Takeda said, carefully, the title she had been denied for 3 years at this hospital. He said it in the presence of every person who had failed to say it, in a room from which none of them could leave, and he said it the way someone says a thing that has needed to be said for a long time. The review concluded without a formal finding. Amara's record was corrected. 3 months later, a position opened in the department that had not existed the week before. She was offered it. She thought about it for exactly 1 day. There is a kind of strength that does not look like strength. It does not announce itself. It does not ask for recognition. It simply stays through the long hours and the cold rooms and the people who refuse to say your name right, and it keeps its hands steady when the hands are the only thing that matter. The world calls that stubbornness. The people who are lucky enough to be saved by it call it something else. She called him Hiroshi. He called her by her full name, always, the same way he had said it in that room, like it deserved the space it took up. That was enough. That was, she thought, everything.